Hey, Ray here. Here is video number 5 in this series, and I'm also incorporating a response to comments around the Swiss vote to ban construction of new minarets, and using that as a springboard for a discussion about Islam. From Genesis to Geneva considers Islam a critical historical element in world development, since its origins in the 7th century and through its translation and propagation of earlier Prussian and Greek writing. 21% of the world's population is Muslim. They are growing rapidly and represent a majority in 1/4 of all nations, and building significant migrant populations in many more. It seems as if relationships with Islam and its communities are pretty damned important. Minarets are but a symbol of the more widespread debate. Fear of significant cultural differences, fear of fundamentalist activity, and imposition of Islamic Sharia law in contradiction to constitutional rights and liberties. The Swiss acceptance of an initiative to ban minarets is being seen by other countries as a wake-up call for governments to listen to people's growing concerns, to more openly address security and cultural integration, to refuse any form of Islamization. Here in Switzerland, the canton of Geneva voted clearly against the ban on minarets, but was in a minority. Consequently, local and international church representatives here stood in unity to show common concern and dismay and their support of the Swiss Muslim community. The Lutheran Church published an open letter. See the link in the sidebar, you can read it. St. Peter's Cathedral Square was the venue for a large gathering to manifest solidarity around mock-ups of minarets constructed there. Tension does exist between religious fundamentalism and modern society, in Islam and in Christianity. Just imagine how life would look today if Christian fundamentalists would have halted scientific and technological progress and put in place strict moral laws from a context of hundreds of years ago. In a theocracy, laws are divine and thus unchallengeable, rigorously enforced and toughly punished. Not that we condone all current day behaviors and use of civil liberties as being moral and desirable, but fundamentalism would mean a return to the Dark Ages, when church subordinated monarch and subjected populations to both material and intellectual poverty. The point is, time has moved on. The context has shifted, and even fundamentalists are forced to agree that some teachings are just inappropriate. Jesus camps are where they bless the computer and the overhead projector, then pray that the power will not go off, while damning technological advancement and scientific discovery if it suggests anything but a 6,000-year-old Earth, then feeding the lobby for excluding such heretical ideas from school curricula. However, those same people probably eat shellfish and haven't yet stoned to death the adulterers in the neighborhood. So I guess that makes them selective kind of fundamentalists. Christian theocracies have basically gone, although Geneva was one of them in the days of the Reformation under the influence of John Calvin, and the Vatican symbolically stands as the last remaining Catholic-led stronghold. Christendom, after all, has the luxury of a 700-year head start over Islam, where theocracies persist, notably Iran and Saudi Arabia. Islamic fundamentalists would like to create more of those, and to save others by preventing democracies from being formed. While at the same time, the tension that Western media portrays inside Iran these days suggests a desire by the people there to break that particular theocratic totalitarianism. Other large population majority Muslim countries like Turkey, where there's 98% Muslim, or Indonesia, where there are 86%, are republics, but they also can be targets for fundamentalist activity and reconversion attempts. What we have to realize is that none of these tensions are new. Islam and Christianity chose progressive pathways at some moment in history, and both have passed through phases of second thoughts. The Islamic golden age of scientific discovery and major contribution in many areas from the 7th to the 13th century was finally plagued by invasions, destruction, and expulsions from Mesopotamia to Iberia. All of that led to reflection, introspection, and crackdown, as the question became, was progress itself at the root of their ills, being incompatible with the teachings of the Quran? Similarly, there were setbacks in the Christian world during the time of the Inquisitions, until the series of Renaissance, the rebirths, and the reawakenings. Islam has not yet lived its Renaissance, like the one that the West sees so positively, like turning on the lights again, like having the progressive juices flowing through the veins of existence. Is Islam closer to the concerns of the earth and the planet? Is it closer to God? Or is it just holding its faithful on a shorter leash? Muslims who move to the West are for the most part moderates, even though we do hear of their next generation surprisingly becoming rather more devout. Perhaps because those children did not choose to become a minority and can themselves feel oppressed and could be searching for their roots and spiritual meaning. Those who chose to move have most likely integrated into a society and an economy that offers hope for them, and an environment that, even if they are practicing worshippers, allows them to choose a moderate interpretation of Islamic rules, as long as their faith remains strong. So, if the Swiss vote has caused such polemic, what can or should Western countries and their Muslim populations do to diffuse the fear and the actual tensions that do exist? Well, it's a multi-level thing. On the first level, which addresses only the symptoms, there are actions to support religious dialogue and move on to the next steps of cultural and political integration. Education, for example, to eliminate misunderstandings and to avoid stereotypes. Enhancing cultural dialogue through actions in schools, in the popular press, actions to pull media bias away from the negative events that take place. And admitting that neither Christians nor the West in general have all the lessons to give, nor all the answers to solving planetary issues. Islam's respect of nature, for example, could provide answers that the West, that we, had not contemplated before. Responsibility at this first level is two-sided. Initiatives must be taken by Muslims as well as by the indigenous political process. But these are first-level actions. They do not touch the root causes. So what is that other level? On the higher level, national foreign policy must be seen to support global solutions to Islamic relations. President Obama has begun that process, which needs to happen with moderate Islam, gaining support from those who themselves do not approve of and even fear extremist activity. Bashing Palestine or providing unconditional support of Israel, regardless of what they do, is no longer an acceptable option. We and our politicians had better realize this. With settlements in the West Bank and now provocatively in East Jerusalem, the Israelis could do well to follow a new course of reflection. But they probably won't, as long as unconditional political support and funding continues to flow in. Oh, and by the way, this subject is probably taboo. The most common response is that discussing it means that it's anti-Semitic. But as you know, I believe taboos are dangerous. And that's a thought summed up rather nicely by a quote attributed to one of the world's most respected and well-known Jewish scientists. Danger to the world is not from the people who perform evil, but rather from those who ignore or tolerate it.